in the book you talk about, say, over the past 25 years, you've conducted over 200 board evaluations. Oh my goodness. Now, is there a common thread or any issues that seem to plague many of these boards that you've experienced during the course of all of these evaluations?
Yes, there certainly are. So that's a great question. There's four things that come out of the majority of the board evaluations. Number one is actually board composition issues. I would say in 3/4 of the board evaluations, people will say there is a certain gap in our board. And very often, board composition is kind of a piecemeal affair. Somebody's retiring, they're hitting the term limit, or they're otherwise leaving the board, and so we're going to try to replace their skills or that sort of thing. One of the new tools that I introduce in the book is called Board 2.0, which is a way of really looking out and doing board succession planning to create the best possible board to oversee this company in 3 years' time, given its business and its strategic direction, and then working back in terms of the skills and experience you need. And that's a really useful exercise, but I kind of developed that through some work with clients, but it was because 3/4 of these board evaluations talked about board composition. The second thing is the pre-reading materials that most boards get. 2/3 of them think they're garbage. I mean, they're a data dump in so many cases. And I was working with a board in Southeast Asia. I think they were getting 800 pages of pre-reading materials that were delivered maybe 4 days before the meeting. And when I actually reviewed some of this material, they were red lines of policy changes. They were very granular kinds of data on different parts of their operations. And then management would criticize the board because the board was getting into all this detail. Well, they were serving it up. So board materials, the pre-reading materials, it's not a sexy topic, but boy does it make a difference if you tackle that proactively, because you're going to have a much better discussion in the board, you're going to avoid micromanagement, and you're probably going to have better board decisions. So the two other areas that come up a lot are how the board engages in strategy. Sometimes management will just come with everything sort of buttoned up and say, okay, here's our strategy. And the board doesn't really understand the sort of analysis that well that went into the strategy. They want to understand what were the different strategic alternatives. And you certainly haven't tapped into the expertise of the board on strategy. When you look at all the talented, accomplished business people that sit on boards, they've got a lot to bring to the party on strategy. And so harnessing that can really be very value-adding, and yet some CEOs just don't. So that's a way that a lot of boards want to work differently with management. And then finally, I would say CEO succession planning. It comes up all the time. It is arguably the board's single most important decision, is who's going to run the company. And you know, if we go back to the 20th century again, it was the CEO who made that decision. They said, this is who my successor is going to be. And the directors would say, okay, you want to play golf? Whereas now, we've got board members who are much more engaged, take the role much more seriously, and this is their single most important decision. So that is nearly always something they feel they need to raise their game on.